I am Greta Mae Laird, 36 years old. I once believed that if I stayed quiet enough, worked hard enough, and did my part behind the scenes, they would one day see me as essential. But then I stood at my sister's graduation party, holding a small gift no one asked about, while my parents handed Madison the keys to a new Tesla and called her the pride of this family from the very beginning. We wanted to give the very best to the daughter who's made this family proud since day one. And I understood some families don't need more to love. They just need someone to forget. I always thought my name would be there out of habit, if nothing else. The screenshot came from Lauren, a cousin I hadn't heard from in months. She posted it on her Instagram story, so proud of our Madison, with a digital confetti filter over an email invitation. It was for the graduation brunch, sent from my mother's address, hosted at my parents' house, the home where I once repainted the porch by myself during spring break because it was cheaper than hiring someone. The list of recipients was clearly visible. I zoomed in. Every aunt, every cousin, family, friends from as far back as kindergarten. Even the florist my mother likes, but not me. I checked my inbox again. Promotions, newsletters, spam. Nothing from her. Not even a BCZ. I opened my phone contacts. Her number was still saved as Mom, though I'd debated changing it to Karen more than once. I called. It rang. Then silence. No voicemail. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. I tried my father next. He picked up on the second ring. Greta! There was no warmth, no question in his voice. I saw the email, I said. I wasn't included. A pause. Then, it would complicate things if you came. That was all. No explanation, no apology, just a closing click before I could speak again. Complicate? What exactly? Folding napkins, standing in the back of a group photo saying, "Congratulations!" With a voice that didn't break, I scrolled back through my emails. A group thread titled, Madison's Graduation, Final Details. Created 2 weeks ago. 63 recipients. I knew because I counted. I forwarded it to myself. Opened it again. No Greta. Not in the two-line. Not in the CC. Not even a trace in the thread history. I opened the folder labeled Family Finance Docs on my desktop, a shared archive from when my grandmother Ruth was still managing the estate planning. The last update from 6 months ago had a document titled Ruth Family Trust, Grandchildren Beneficiaries. I opened it. Madison Laird, Lauren Mayfield, Brady Whitlow, Becky Crowley. No Greta. I closed the file. A while ago my grandmother had explained the criteria those who contribute meaningfully to the family narrative, her words. At the time, I didn't ask what that meant. Now I understood I was never part of the narrative, only the margins. My fingers grazed the edge of a worn silver key on the hallway table. Still on the ring, still marked, front door, home. I hadn't used it in months, but I kept it there, out of inertia, not expectation. I opened Instagram again. The party prep had begun, a white tent rising in the backyard, long tables lined with blue and gold sashes. Someone captioned a photo of string lights. Brunch of the decade. In the corner of one image, I noticed something small, green, familiar. The cactus. The one I planted years ago in a chipped pot at the front steps before Madison got into Columbia, before the porch repainting was deemed too messy for guests. Now it sat near the back fence half in shadow, like someone moved it to keep it out of frame. I stared at it longer than I should have. It had grown sideways. It was still alive. A notification buzzed. A message from Serena. My colleague at the agency need your input on the Maya pitch deck. Can we Zoom at 5? I typed. Sure. Let me finish something first. Then deleted the word sure. Then deleted the whole reply. Closed the app. In my drafts folder there was an unsent email to my mother. Subject line, about Madison's graduation. No body text, only the blinking cursor. I tried to imagine what she would say if I confronted her. Likely something smooth, rehearsed. You've always had a different rhythm, Greta. You don't enjoy crowds. Or, worse, it's Madison's moment. Let's not dilute it. I closed the laptop. In the kitchen I made tea. The old ceramic mug still bore the faint crack from when I dropped it after my first regional design award, and no one called. I never fixed it. The fracture ran like a quiet seam along the inside curve, barely visible, unless you knew to look. The kettle clicked off. I poured the water slowly, watching the steam rise and vanish into nothing. I took the mug to the windowsill and stood there. The room around me didn't feel like absence. It felt like space. A few houses down, a girl on a bike paused in front of a mailbox. She looked inside, then pedaled on. I watched her go. My phone lit up again. This time a message from Madison. Hey, can you send me that template you made for legal briefs? My study group loves it. No mention of the brunch. No note about the invitation. I typed nothing, set the phone down, turned the mug slightly, aligning the crack away from me. It didn't need to be repaired. It only needed to be quiet. I used to think that if I stayed useful long enough, they would remember I was family. The first time I designed something for them, it was a birthday card. Madison was turning 13. I printed it on linen paper, folded it carefully, added hand-drawn borders. My mother glanced at it during cake prep and said, "Looks like something you'd find in the discount aisle at Hallmark. Still, she'll appreciate the effort." I offered to redo it. She waved me off. After that, I kept making things anyway. Christmas menus, Easter invitations, the slideshow for Dad's retirement dinner. I formatted them all with precision, kerned titles, cohesive palettes, print-ready PDFs. I never signed them. The videos took more time. For his 60th, I stayed up 3 nights straight, stitching clips from old camcorder tapes. I color-corrected everything, added motion graphics, and set the audio to his favorite Bach suite. When they played it at the restaurant, the title card read, "Created by Madison and Friends." No one looked at me when it ended. They looked at her. I didn't ask them to fix it. Not then. I held the camera during every group photo. Weddings, barbecues, family reunions. "You're good with angles," they said. "We need you behind the lens." I told myself it was fine. Someone had to hold the camera. I just never realized how easily that became a way of not being in the picture at all. There was a Thanksgiving when Madison forgot her laptop at school. She called, crying something about a scholarship application and a crashed hard drive. I skipped a studio critique, drove 6 hours, and brought her a backup I had quietly saved from our shared computer. She handed it in on time, got the award. At dinner that week, my father lifted his wine and said, "To Madison, always prepared, always ahead." I watched the cranberry sauce congeal on my plate. No one noticed I didn't toast. In college, I delayed a semester-long internship to help her rework her personal statement. We sat in the dorm cafeteria. She drank chai and highlighted her own drafts. I read grammar guides and line edited until my back ached. She got into Columbia. In the announcement email she wrote, "Couldn't have done it without Mom and Dad pushing me so hard." My name wasn't there. I checked twice. Once I sent Dad my design portfolio. It was for a grant I was applying to. I thought he might like to see what I'd built, what I'd taught myself to do. I printed it on textured cardstock, added a brass fastener, included a note and pen. Thought you might be curious. He flipped through it during halftime of a Patriots game. No expression, just flipped. Finally, he said, "Is there a version of this that's simpler? It's a little hard on the eyes." He handed it back. That night, I placed it on the kitchen table. When I returned the next morning, it was gone. No one mentioned it again. During Madison's senior prom, I spent hours adjusting her dress hem. My mother paced behind me. "Thank God you don't need this kind of attention," she said. "Some girls just aren't made for the spotlight." She didn't say it cruelly. That's what made it worse. I kept trying anyway. When they asked for help, I said yes. When they needed rides, food, feedback, design work, I gave it. Always promptly, always polished, always quiet. I believed that maybe one day they'd glance across the room and say, "She belongs here." They didn't need to say it out loud. A glance would have been enough. At my cousin Lauren's wedding, they handed out program booklets I had designed white linen stock with a pale green monogram. Everyone complimented them. My aunt turned to Madison and said, "You've always had such an eye." Madison smiled and accepted the compliment. Later, I found one of the discarded programs under a table. It had a water ring on it from someone's cocktail. I folded it into my coat pocket. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe to remind myself I'd been there, even if no one noticed. I came across it again last month, tucked inside the lining. The ink had bled into itself, turning the monogram into a moss-colored bruise. Sometimes when I visit my parents' house, I still check the hallway wall where the family photos are framed in even rows. I counted once 42 images. Madison appears in 38. I appear in 3. 2 of them as a child. In the third, I'm half-turned in the background. You can't see my face. At a dinner last year, my mother leaned toward me with a glass of white wine and said, "You never gave us trouble, Greta. You were always the easy one." Then she turned away before I could answer. I stared at the rim of her glass, watched her lipstick print slowly fade into the condensation. There was a smudge of foundation near her neckline, a loose thread on the cuff of her blouse, all the things she would have noticed on me. I still have the card Madison sent when she got her job offer, a pastel envelope, thick stock. Inside, "So proud of you," in gold script. Below it in her handwriting, "Thanks for believing in me. Love you, M." It was addressed to our parents. They showed it to me at brunch, passed it around like proof of their success. None of them noticed the handwriting wasn't mine. I didn't remind them. Some people don't need reminding. They just need space to fill. Some people keep handing over pieces of themselves, thinking eventually someone will stop taking and start seeing. I used to be one of them. I never expected my name to shine, only to be written down correctly. The envelope was pale green, thick paper with a silver edge. Lauren's wedding invitation. I ran my fingers over the raised lettering before opening it, already knowing what would be inside. Madison's name appeared in script, nestled beneath the words, "Bridesmaid" and "Family." There was no mention of me, not as guest, not as designer, not as anything. I had created the entire suite, custom floral monogram map insert embossed detail on the RSVP. My mother had sent the brief in a text. "Lauren wants something understated but elegant. Do your thing." I did. Dozens of hours. The sample deck was returned with a smiley face sticker from Lauren's fiancé and a forwarded message, "Looks great. She's very talented. They never used my name in the group chat." At the wedding, I sat at table 11, far back, near the kitchen doors. The napkins were folded just as I'd taught the planner offset, not centered. No one mentioned it. That same week, I found a folded flyer from my high school art show tucked inside a box in my closet. It had a smudge on the corner from where my thumb had pressed into the ink. The title of my piece had been Form Without Permission. It won regional recognition that year. I brought the certificate home still warm from the printer and placed it on the kitchen counter next to a bowl of lemons. My mother glanced at it between errands. Madison was invited to a private lunch with her principal today. The district superintendent was there. She might get early consideration for Columbia. She moved the lemons and covered the certificate with her planner. I never brought it up again. Most of my awards are in a shoebox now, the kind with a broken lid and a sticker that says, Size 7, Final Sale. Inside they're curled at the edges, one still slightly damp from the time the roof leaked. My name is spelled correctly on all of them, but none have frames. Madison's recognitions line the hallway, triple-matted, labeled, dusted regularly. The lighting above each is soft and intentional, as though her accomplishments deserved mood. Once when I was 19, I stood in front of those frames and imagined mine between them. Just one. Maybe the layout certificate from the State Design Council. I asked quietly if I could hang it. My father folded his arms. Those walls are already balanced. It's not about excluding you, it's about preserving symmetry. I didn't reply. I folded the certificate in half and left it in the glove compartment of my car for 2 years. My 18th birthday was the only one I remember not being postponed or rescheduled. It was merged. My mother handed me a cake in the kitchen, while Madison and her friends studied for SATs in the living room. The frosting had started to melt slightly, and the lettering bled into the plastic edge of the tray. We thought it made sense to combine things, she said. Everyone's already here. I sliced a small piece after they'd all gone to bed. Ate it over the sink in the dark. The candle was still half burned in the trash can. That night, my grandmother Ruth called. Her voice always came without punctuation, steady and plain. I saw the photo of your school mural, the one with the birds. You used your own color palette, didn't you? I said yes. You have an eye for shadow that people mistake for gloom. But shadow knows where light ends. She never sent cards. She sent articles about forgotten painters, old tubes of watercolor recipes clipped from 1992 newspapers. On my 21st, she mailed me a spool of thick blue thread. No note. I kept it in a drawer with loose buttons and extra lanyards. During a family brunch last spring, I mentioned a feature my work had received in a design journal. It was a small corner write-up, but the layout had my initials on it. My mother reached for the coffee pot. Is that the same thing you did for Lauren's invites? That program you use, it's like Microsoft Paint, right? Madison laughed. No, Mom. It's not paint. There was no further discussion. Afterward, I wiped down the table. The mug I'd used had a faint ring on the inside where the cream had settled. No one else drank from the plain white mugs anymore. They preferred the ones with cursive affirmations. Blessed gather family is forever. Mine just said 10 Oz. I used to think that if I performed usefulness with enough grace, I'd be invited to stay. Now I wonder if I ever had a seat to begin with. Sometimes I dream of my name written in cursive, soft, and centered on one of those gold-edged cards. Not bold. Just there. Not because I demand it. Because I was always part of the sentence. They just forgot to read it aloud. Some gifts aren't meant to be wrapped. They just arrive too loud to be ignored. I showed up early. Not because I was expected, but because Ruth had said, "Come. Not for them, for you." Her voice didn't waver. It never did. The house looked the same, but sharper fresh mulch along the walkway, rented chairs stacked in rows, ribbon threaded through every railing, like someone had tried too hard to make joy visible. I asked where to help, and someone handed me a box of table cards. I arranged them in careful lines, correcting the tilted ones. I rewound a speaker cord that trailed near the edge. I replaced a flickering bulb in the hallway without being asked. Nobody stopped to say hello. My mother passed me with a clipboard tucked under her arm. "Greta, make sure the banner's level. The photographer's arriving soon." Then she kept walking. The banner said, "Congratulations, Madison in navy and gold. Block letters too tall, too glossy." I adjusted one corner, then stepped back. A breeze caught the edge, lifting the D for just a moment before it settled again. Inside, the cake had been delivered. 3 tiers, cream-frosted, trimmed with silver beads and sugared roses on top, in delicate fondant to our shining star Madison. No family name. No, "We're proud of you." Just a star, solitary and claimed. I held my gift in both hands, a small square box wrapped in charcoal paper, tied with linen thread. Inside a framed photo of Madison at age 12, standing beside Ruth after her first debate win. I had restored it from a scanned negative, adjusted the shadows, reprinted it on archival mat. Ruth's expression was steady hand resting on Madison's shoulder. I'd mounted it in a whitewashed frame, the kind that softened over time. Alongside it, I had placed the silver hair clip Ruth once wore every Christmas. The one she left in my coat pocket 2 years ago without comment. She never asked for it back. By the time guests filled the backyard, I had already stepped aside. I stood near the trellis where the light filtered through uneven slats and cast striped shadows on the grass. My name was not on the place cards. I found a seat without one. Someone tapped a glass. My father stood near the bar holding a wireless microphone like a surgeon gripping unfamiliar tools. From the day she entered this world, we knew Madison was something extraordinary. His voice carried through the speakers, clipped and smooth. "She made us proud before she could even speak." Polite laughter. He went on. High school honors, debate titles, Columbia, clerkships pending. I watched the glass in his other hand tip slightly each time he said, "Brilliant," or "exceptional." My mother stood nearby, smiling with teeth pressed together. She touched her pearls every few minutes, like she was counting beats between words. The applause came at the mention of Madison's new position, some firm with a name that sounded like money. Then came the surprise. He stepped to the edge of the lawn, pressed a button on a small remote. From behind the hedge, a white car glided into view, sleek, silent, ribboned. A Tesla bright enough to sting the eyes. My mother clapped first. "We wanted to honor her the way she deserves," my father said, gesturing like a man closing a sale. "With something worthy of her future." Madison gasped in a tone I hadn't heard since we were children, and she found a puppy on the porch. They handed her the key fob like a sacred object. I looked down at the box in my hands. The thread had loosened slightly from the humidity. My mother brushed past me. "Hold off on that," she said, nodding toward the gift. "It's not the right time." No one else noticed her gesture. No one else looked at me at all. People surrounded the car, taking photos, peering through the windows, marveling at the touchscreen dashboard. Someone joked about the bow being bigger than the trunk. I stayed where I was. Madison posed near the driver's side mirror. She looked radiant, white dress heels just sunk enough in the grass to seem grounded. I saw my father angle her toward the best light. He whispered something. She laughed. I watched through the branches of a potted ficus, half concealed by a decorative urn. The ice in my glass had melted. Later, inside, they rolled out the cake with a flourish. My mother took another microphone. To our brightest light, may you keep shining far and wide. A pause. Let's eat. Someone turned to me as slices were handed out. Greta, did you do the table cards? They're very clean. Then they walked away. I sat down near the kitchen doorway, the box still in my lap, my thumb pressed gently against the seam of the paper. Not enough to tear it, just to feel it resist. The silver clip inside had a tiny scratch on the underside, an old mark from when Ruth dropped it on the stone floor years ago. She left it as it was. She always said, "A thing can be worn and still be whole." The cake was sweet, the room full, the car gleamed under string lights. No one noticed I hadn't moved. No one noticed I hadn't spoken. Some silences are louder than celebration. Some names, when left unspoken, begin to disappear even in their own ears. I listened to mine vanish in the space where no one called it. I don't remember the first time I realized silence could be used as punctuation. I packed without a checklist. There was no urgency. Just movement. The kind that begins when the air shifts, not a gust, not a storm, just a slight pull toward the open. The prints came down first, each corner left behind a faint square where light had failed to touch. I rolled them slowly, edge to edge, careful not to crease. Some had never been framed, some had never been seen. The one of the tangled branches drawn the week I turned 28 still smelled faintly of graphite and eucalyptus oil. The closet gave little resistance. Clothes folded easily, most still holding the same shape they had when I first unpacked them here. I found the dress from the design award ceremony. I'd worn it once, black with a slight shimmer. My mother had said it made me look too sharp. Try something softer, she'd said, less ambitious. I left it in the donation bag. Under the bed was a cardboard box labeled Archives. Inside a journal, I never finished a broken zipper pouch of markers, and a receipt from a grocery store near the house in Cambridge, where I first lived after school. The receipt had a circle around a single item, chamomile tea in red pen. Ruth had circled it during her visit that winter, claiming it helped soften the body into sleep. She always used verbs the way other people used fabric, folded, tucked. Let them hold their own shape. I tucked the receipt into the side pocket of my suitcase. Before leaving, I unplugged the floor lamp I rarely used. The bulb flickered once when I touched it. I wrapped the cord around the base and tied it off with a rubber band from the drawer that held unused gift tags. The bank was quiet, fluorescent, slow, polite. The teller tapped at her keyboard and asked for my ID. I slid it across. "You're listed here under the Whitlow Trust extension," she said. "Would you like to keep that open? Or no?" She paused, eyes flicking to the screen. "Closing the auxiliary account will remove your access to the shared benefits line." "I know." The form she printed had my name at the top, in capital letters, followed by the words, "Secondary Authorization Revocation of Privileges." I signed with my full name, no initials, no flourish, just straight lines. When she handed me the confirmation slip, I folded it in half, then in half again. The thermal paper creased sharply, resisting at first. Outside, I stood beside a bike rack and took the silver ring off my index finger. It had been a birthday gift. Slim engraved on the inside with a date I no longer recalled celebrating. I rolled it between my thumb and forefinger once before placing it in the smallest compartment of my wallet, behind an expired Metro card. At home, I opened my laptop and clicked into my drafts folder. Subject request for personal leave body. There's something I need to reconstruct, not a layout, not a brand, not a file. I'm trying to draw the first lines of myself again. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. I'll be reachable, but only if absolutely necessary. I stared at the cursor, then added 1 line, I'll submit my hours through Thursday. After that, I'd like to stop counting. I hovered, clicked send. Julia would understand. She had a way of seeing things before they were spoken. Next, I opened a second draft, one I had written months ago, after a dinner, where no one asked about my work. Subject. Just wanted to say, I know I'm not the one you expected to carry the name forward. I'm not Madison. I know that by now. Still, I thought I might earn something close to belonging. I read the lines twice, highlighted them all, pressed delete. The page blinked blank as if waiting to be written by someone else. I closed the window. The box labeled Someday sat on the top shelf of my closet. It held a key wrapped in paper towel, slightly yellowed. On it, written in Ruth's handwriting, Lighthouse Cottage still breathing. She'd given it to me the week after my graduation. I had thanked her and placed it in my suitcase. It had stayed wrapped for 3 years untouched. I unwrapped it slowly. The key was warm in my palm, though the air wasn't. I closed my fingers around it and held it there for a full minute. I called her. I'd like to come. Her pause was brief. You've always been welcome. I wasn't sure. You were just waiting for permission no one needed to give. I wrote the address on the back of a receipt and underlined it. I packed it with my passport, though I wasn't crossing any borders. Some departures still need proof of identity. Before I left, I found the beige sweater my mother gave me last year. The tag still hung from the collar. Professional but humble, she had said, handing it to me at brunch. I placed it back into the drawer untouched. I zipped my suitcase, left the window open a crack, turned off the coffee machine but didn't unplug it. I didn't plan on coming back, but I didn't close anything permanently, only quietly. No one knew I was leaving. There were no messages sent, no notes taped to the fridge, no thank you texts, no I'm doing this for me captions, only a door that closed the same way it always had. But this time, I didn't lock it. I didn't look back to see if the hallway lights were off. I didn't count the number of times I'd walked that floor, or wonder if someone would notice the absence of my mug in the dish rack. Some leavings don't require distance, only direction. And some silences don't come from fear, only freedom. I folded the receipt with the cottage address one more time, then tucked it between the pages of my sketchbook. It didn't need to be remembered, only used. I didn't know a room could be so quiet without feeling empty. The floorboards didn't creak when I walked across them. They shifted like someone exhaling slowly through the joints. I hadn't expected that the way an old house gives just enough to let you know it's still listening. The key sat in the middle of the kitchen table, exactly where I had placed it the night before. I didn't hide it, didn't slide it into a drawer or under a napkin. It stayed visible, small and silver, shaped like it had been filed down by years of someone else's use. I looked at it twice before pouring water into the kettle. The mug I chose was chipped at the rim. The glaze had cracked along the base, revealing faint veins like old skin. I ran my thumb over it and set it down anyway. The coffee I made went untouched. The steam curled away and disappeared without apology. I found the sketch pad in the suitcase beneath my shoes. I opened it to a blank page and set it on the windowsill. Then I closed it again. My hands weren't ready. The windows faced north. Ruth had written that in pencil on a torn corner of notepad paper left inside the pantry. North-facing good light after 2 p.m. Don't overthink. She hadn't knocked. The basket on the steps said enough sourdough wrapped in linen, a small jar of lemon curd, and a spoon wrapped in twine. I hadn't seen her, but I didn't need to. There was no mirror in the hallway, just a nail where one had probably hung. I stood in front of it anyway, brushing my hair with one hand, pulling it back with the other. The clip I used had a missing tooth. It still held. No one came in to adjust my collar. No voice behind me suggesting, smile with your eyes, not your mouth. I didn't smile at all. It wasn't required. I rearranged the couch cushions twice, not because they were wrong, but because I could. The fabric was faded, almost green, but not quite. There was a button missing from one corner. I turned it so the gap faced the wall. That night, I fell asleep without brushing my teeth. I had meant to. The toothbrush sat outbalanced in a ceramic holder with a crack through the middle. But the sky turned dark too quickly, and my body followed. I woke up before dawn. The blanket had slipped to the floor. My socks were on the opposite chair. I couldn't remember how either had gotten there. The kettle was still full from the day before. I reheated the water and poured it over the grounds. The taste was bitter, but the warmth stayed longer than I expected. A seagull landed on the railing outside the studio window. Its feet tapped against the wood in 3 uneven beats before it flew off. I watched it go. I didn't follow it with the camera. The first line I drew was crooked. Not intentionally. My hand just moved that way. I didn't erase it. I traced over it with a thicker pencil, added a second line to anchor the shape. It wasn't beautiful, but it belonged on the page. In the corner of the room, I placed the folded receipt with the address Ruth had given me years ago. I pressed it between 2 stones I had picked up on the walk from the postbox. One was smooth, the other cracked straight through the middle. On the second morning, I found a note under the basket. Try using the small brushes today, the ones that fray. There were no brushes in the basket. She wasn't offering tools, just permission. I painted the windowsill in silence. The wood drank the color unevenly. Some parts absorbed, some resisted. I left it that way. A message came through around noon. A familiar number, unfamiliar tone. Just checking in. Mom said you left kind of suddenly. I didn't respond. Another message followed. If you need anything, I can swing by this weekend. I turned the phone face down. The tide came in and pulled the horizon closer. The gull didn't return. By the 3rd day, I had stopped measuring spoons. I poured flour into a bowl with my hands stirring until it felt wrong, then hot. The dough didn't rise much, but it held together in the oven. The crust cracked unevenly, but I ate it anyway. I placed a new sheet of paper on the wall, pinned it at 4 corners. No frame. Just edges. I stood back and stared at it without picking up a pencil. The silence in the cottage was not the silence of forgetting. It was the kind that waited, that didn't demand, that made space. The bathroom mirror had a rust spot in the corner. My reflection warped slightly where the spot began. I brushed my teeth slowly, watching the way my mouth lost shape at the edge. I didn't correct it. Some days I moved the chair from one side of the room to the other, sat in each spot. Noticed how the light changed on the floor. I didn't photograph it. I didn't try to capture the moment. I just stayed in it until it ended. No one knocked. No one called my name from the hallway. No one told me to hurry or wait or stand straighter. I didn't explain where I was or what I was making. I placed the chipped mug back on the windowsill after each use, watched the line of the handle shift slightly, depending on the light. I left it there. Some days begin without instruction. Some mornings do not require permission. And sometimes just once the quiet feels like a room remembering your name. Some silences don't echo. They just settle like dust waiting to be rearranged but never removed. The first call came just after I wiped the counter clean with a damp cloth. The screen lit up once. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the voicemail gave it away. If you have a minute, come by the house. Your father thinks it looks strange without you in the family photo. The message ended with a pause, as if something else had been meant, and then discarded. I rinsed the cloth, hung it over the faucet. A few hours later, a text buzzed through. Madison brief and blurred around the edges. They're putting together a slideshow for the firm's gala. Mom wants to use that one beach photo, the one where you're next to Grandma Ruth. Just checking if you're okay with it. A winking emoji blinked for half a second before it vanished. She had deleted it, but not quickly enough to outpace the lock screen preview. The photo wasn't from the beach. It was from the lake the summer after college. I had just lost a freelance bid, but no one asked about that. I remembered the wind pulling loose my braid. Remembered laughing with my head turned just enough to make it easy to crop out my name. They'd used it before. I didn't respond. I didn't delete the message, either. I let it sit like unopened mail from a sender who only remembers your name when there's paperwork to file. Dinner brought another voicemail. My father's voice dry as an invoice. It's just... we need to look unified. Madison's announcement is important. People ask where you are. Maybe we could get a new photo, just the four of us. Quick and clean. No, how are you? No mention of the last time I was in the same room with them. I scrubbed at a spot on the windowsill that had never bothered me before. The paint flaked beneath my nail. Underneath the original wood remained stained, but unbroken. Ruth arrived without knocking. She never knocked. A paper bag in one hand, warm loaves inside, slightly misshapen. Her script across the top, soft pencil. Try sourdough this time. Easier to tear. Harder to ruin. Underneath the bag, a folded pamphlet, watermarked printer paper, with soft corners, local workshop series, creative renewal for beginners, names handwritten in the margin, Evelyn, Clara, Joan, tentative, a line scribbled at the bottom two's enough to begin. If you feel like sharing, that is. No instructions, no explanation. Just a space gently held open. The next morning, another message, my father again. Don't drag this out. We all agreed this would be better for everyone if you just showed up and smiled. This isn't the time to make a statement. No address, no invitation. Just a sentence with corners like glass. The kettle hissed. I poured the water, but didn't drink the tea. I tipped it into the soil beneath the porch. The steam curled once and disappeared. I found the frame they used to hang in the hallway, brushed, metal dulled gold. I'd taken it with me not out of spite, but because no one else remembered who shot the photo inside it. I removed the backing slid in a new sketch I'd done of the shoreline. The perspective was off. The waterline slanted, but the trees leaned in as if listening. I set it on the shelf beside the bread. Later that day Ruth returned. No bread this time, just her and a folded apron. She laid it on the back of a chair. I told Evelyn to bring her pencils. She's more afraid of blank paper than of failing. That's rare these days. I didn't nod. I didn't need to. The voicemails stayed in my inbox. I checked the postbox. A card, pale cream, no return address. Inside blue ink in a careful hand. Your grandmother said you're back. If you're teaching, I'd like to learn. A name I hadn't heard in years. Someone from school. Someone who used to sit behind me in art history, chewing the ends of her pen. I placed it beside the workshop pamphlet. Madison sent another text. Gala's next Friday. Just one photo. That's all. In and out. For Mom. No offer to visit. No mention of the car, the cake, the last look. It read like a receipt, waiting to be signed. I sat at the table, a sketchbook in my lap, untouched. Outside, a bird landed on the railing, one wing bent the wrong way. It still balanced. I reread Ruth's line, one class is still a class. I didn't reply. I didn't erase anything. I folded the card, kept the pamphlet, hung the apron. Some returns are not arrivals, some knocks are not invitations, and some names are only spoken when someone else needs them to complete the picture. The woman in the mirror doesn't wait anymore. I stopped tying my hair the way they liked it. There was no announcement. Just one morning I let it fall uneven and unsealed the way it wanted to. The woman in the bathroom mirror didn't wince. I brewed coffee in the cup I had painted by hand. A cracked glaze near the rim, uneven swirls of blue and rust, no set, no matching spoon. It didn't belong to a collection. It didn't need to. There were now rhythms that began without instruction. Sweep the porch, fold the old towel, slice a pear, even if it bruised at the edge. The things no one noticed became the things that defined the day. I taught Mia Langley how to hold tracing paper against a sunlit table. Let the light do half the work, I told her, without raising my voice. She used to sit behind me in homeroom, a girl who once borrowed my pencil and never gave it back. Now she returned with her daughter and a canvas bag of curiosity. Is this how you spend your afternoons now? Evelyn ran her hand along the wooden shelf, lined with jars of old buttons and ink pots. Feels more real than Madison's campaign booth. I didn't ask what campaign. I didn't ask what booth. She held up a folded flyer. She's running for community liaison with the city board. Your name's not on the endorsements. She said it'd be complicated. I reached for the dried lavender in a clay tin and shifted the topic toward font spacing. Some things didn't need follow-up. By then, Serena Lowe had sent her second email. Not the short kind with a subject line and 3 sentences, but a letter. We're building a new art literacy program. I kept thinking of your style, quiet but precise. Would you consider joining? It wasn't addressed to Dear Ms. Laird. It simply began with, Greta, I trust your eye. When I replied, I signed for the first time with something I hadn't written before, Greta Laird, visual storyteller. I stared at those 3 words before clicking send. They didn't look borrowed. They didn't need approval. No one had to say they liked it first. The studio started to smell like pencil shavings and rosemary. Mia brought over a small jar of paintbrushes she said belonged to her mother. Evelyn offered to bring snacks next week and asked if I'd ever consider charging for these sessions. Only if you start calling them classes, I said. She laughed, soft and without permission. By the window, a bowl of water caught the light. I sketched its reflection. Not perfect, not even. But it was mine. That night, a text appeared from Madison. Mom called you difficult again yesterday. Said you always make things harder than they need to be. I waited. The screen glowed, expecting. Then I typed slowly, I'm not difficult. I'm just done translating myself. I deleted it. Instead I wrote, you don't have to explain me to her. I'm living. No dots, no wave emoji, just words. That was all. There was no reply. I folded a tea towel I had stitched myself, crooked lines, the kind that no one compliments, the kind that stays. When I walked past the hallway mirror, I stopped. She looked back. No lipstick, no curated earrings, no brush to neaten the loose strands around my temples. She wasn't dressed for a dinner. She wasn't hoping to be asked to stay. I leaned in. There were small lines by the mouth, a freckle I never noticed near my eye, a faint crease where I used to raise my brows when Mother asked, "Is that really what you're wearing?" She had nothing to explain. They hadn't written again, not since the last message about using an older photo for the family legacy wall, not since I didn't respond. No one asked what I was building. No one asked what I was drawing. But the rosemary kept growing, and the tin box of buttons had gone from full to half used. I wasn't alone, not exactly, but I wasn't waiting either. Ruth dropped off a fresh loaf with no note, just a napkin tucked inside that read, "You start with 2 people, then you forget how many are watching." I placed the napkin in my drawer, not with the keepsakes, but with the pencils I use daily, the ordinary ones, the ones no one sees. The woman in the mirror didn't wait for applause. She didn't pause at the empty inbox. She just tucked her shirt in halfway and reached for her keys. Tomorrow I might teach Mia how to blend charcoal into damp paper. Or maybe not. No one needs to be told it's art. I've always preferred pen over pencil. There's something about the permanence how ink commits to the page, even when the words aren't right. I used black ink this time, not blue. The form asked for full name reason for petition signature. I wrote slowly. Greta Mae Laird. It didn't feel like borrowing. It felt returned. The clerk didn't comment. He took the form, checked the date, handed me a duplicate. I placed it carefully inside the folder. On the outside, I had written nothing. I didn't want to explain it to anyone waiting behind me, or even to myself. Outside the building, the wind wasn't sharp. It moved quietly, not asking to be noticed. I sat on the bench beside the postbox, pulling the second envelope from my bag. Brown paper, no label. Paper, no. Inside the faded family photograph from the Christmas brunch, my figure cut cleanly out, leaving only a gap where my face had once leaned forward to catch the light. The house, the plates, the garland still intact. Just no proof I had been there. Beneath that, the household registry bound in maroon leather with a gold-pressed family name I no longer carried. It still smelled like the drawer it had sat in for years, lavender and faint mildew. I hadn't touched it in nearly a decade. But I remembered where I used to be listed under eldest daughter. No signature next to it. No annotation. Just a line that used to mean I belonged. The last item was the note. I wrote it the night before, folded twice, then again. No greeting. No sign-off. Only this: I no longer need a spot on the wall. I need air. I sealed the envelope and pressed the flap flat with my palm. The postbox opened with a reluctant groan, like something trying to hold on to what should be let go. I didn't pause before dropping it in. It made no sound when it landed. The cottage wasn't waiting for me. It never had. I returned to the quiet room where my desk faced the water, sat down with my laptop, and clicked open the email from Helen at the agency. Her message was warm. They wanted me back. Full-time. Higher salary. Bigger portfolio. "We're rebuilding the design department," it read, "and we can't imagine it without you." I reread it twice, not out of indecision, out of habit. Then I typed slowly. "I appreciate the offer, But I'm choosing a different kind of building now. I'm busy living, not proving. I didn't wait for a reply. Later, I opened my messages. One unread thread from Madison. Mom says you're acting distant again. I told her you've always been that way, hard to predict. Thought you'd want to know. Below it, another one from 2 days before they're thinking of redoing the family website. Do you still have that old beach photo? I typed. Paused. Erased. Then, if you ever want to meet as sisters, not as proxies for someone else, I'll be here. Until then, keep the photo. I no longer need to be in it. I left it unsent for a moment, watching the cursor blink. Then I pressed send on the windowsill, sat the ceramic cup I painted last week. It wasn't perfect. The glaze pooled unevenly, the handle slightly off-center, but it sat solid in my hand, warmed by fresh coffee. I drank slowly, one sip at a time, without forgetting. The mirror above the sink showed no makeup, no pressed shirt, no attempt to flatten myself into someone else's outline. My hair curled the way it wanted. I left it alone. Beside the sink, the drawer still held the old bracelet my grandmother once gave me. I hadn't worn it in years, not since the day someone at a wedding mistook me for the helper, not a guest. That day my mother had looked at me and said flatly, "Don't stand behind Madison. You're making the pictures look uneven." I hadn't said anything then. I don't remember if I even nodded, but I remembered the shape of that moment, how it pressed down behind my ribs for days afterward. I didn't carry that moment anymore. The legal confirmation would arrive in 2 weeks, the clerk said. A new driver's license, new tax records. The surname Laird would replace the one I once had to carry, like a suitcase too full to close. I didn't plan a celebration. I didn't tell Ruth right away. She would know in her own time. She'd see it in the signature of my next letter, the return address on a card. Nothing loud. Just different. One drawer in my studio now held blank paper cut and folded, waiting for new designs. I placed one inside an envelope, completely empty. No pattern, no logo, just space. I folded the flap but didn't seal it. Some endings don't need closure. Just a door left quietly shut. I stood by the window and didn't reach for my phone. I didn't scroll through photos or reread old threads. I didn't wonder if they noticed. I didn't need them to. I had chosen my name. I had mailed the last envelope. I had left the frame without slamming it. And I wasn't waiting to be replaced in it anymore. I used to count the teaspoons, the exact number of leaves, the steeping time, the angle of the cup's handle to the plate. Nothing spilled. Nothing out of place. This morning I used my fingers. I dropped in a pinch, then another, and let it swirl in the boiling water without watching the clock. The steam rose without shape. It didn't try to impress. I placed the cup near the sketch pad, let it fog the lower right corner. Mint, not Earl Grey, the kind my mother once called pedestrian. I didn't stir. The window opened on the first try. The latch had rusted months ago, but it had since given up resisting. Wind came in like something familiar. It didn't bring news, only breath. It carried the salt of the sea and the hush of wings overhead, something light and far with no name I needed to know. The page in front of me stayed unfinished. I had started drawing a tide pool, then stopped. Not because I doubted it, but because I didn't need to finish it today. The colors sat open, brush bristles, soft and damp. Nothing about it asked to be explained. That felt enough. A letter sat just beside the teacup. Cream paper creased twice. The envelope had been tucked between a folded kitchen towel and a bag of rosemary crackers Ruth had dropped off earlier. The handwriting leaned slightly to the left, steady despite its age. Evelyn wrote, "Your little class made me remember my hands still shake from joy, not just arthritis." I kept the letter flat on the table. I didn't pin it up, didn't reply right away. It stayed beside the mint steam like a quiet companion. It didn't ask for gratitude. It only existed. Outside, the wood of the porch groaned beneath the weight of nothing. I stepped out barefoot, felt the grain, the old paint cracking gently beneath my toes. Near the lowest step, a flower had bloomed, some wild seaside thing with a faded blue throat and no fragrance. It pushed through a splintered gap, curled around the shadow of the railing and faced upward. No one had planted it. No one had watered it. Still it grew. The air was dry. I didn't feel watched. That was the difference. Once I would have looked over my shoulder, wondering if I should be smiling. Once I would have heard a voice behind me. "That top's too plain. You're young, look like it. You don't need to keep drawing if no one's paying. Maybe let Madison handle the visuals. You do the structure better." "Don't take it personally, she's just more polished." "You're not wrong, but you're not necessary." Each phrase had come like a gentle tap on the shoulder, a redirected step, a microphone turned away just before I could speak. I didn't argue. I kept handing over the frame and holding the light. This porch didn't need applause. The flower didn't want a vase. The brush didn't need correction. The kettle inside whistled faintly again. I didn't move. The wind passed through the chimes above the window. I hadn't noticed them before, and I still wasn't sure who had hung them. Maybe Ruth, maybe someone before her. The sound was uneven, soft like breath, like something not performed but allowed. There were emails I hadn't opened, a group message from someone's birthday, an update from the community board, a forwarded event flyer for a family acquaintance's gallery show. I didn't respond. I didn't delete. I just didn't enter the room they asked me to rejoin. I hadn't blocked anyone, but I had left every conversation that treated me like a footnote, every group where I had once written a full sentence and only received a like, never a reply. The mint had gone lukewarm. I took a sip anyway. My name signed at the bottom of the lesson plan, pinned to the fridge, felt like it fit. Greta Mae Laird. I didn't need to reread it. I had stopped wondering how it sounded in other people's mouths. I taught Evelyn and Mia twice a week now. Sometimes a third person joined, sometimes not. We didn't take photos. I didn't send out surveys. I didn't record the sessions for branding. We laughed once over how lopsided Mia's bowl had turned out. Then Evelyn dipped her finger in ink and signed the bottom "still here." No one corrected her spelling. No one asked her to redo it. I let the silence keep it safe. The old bracelet sat in a drawer, still untarnished. I hadn't worn it, but I hadn't hidden it. Some things didn't need to be displayed or erased. A storm had passed 2 nights ago. No damage, just noise. The next morning I found the porch flower still intact, even more open. I made no wish. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need the flower to mean anything. It was enough that it lived unasked, unguarded, unnamed. I picked up the brush again, not to finish the tide pool, just to move a line, and I thought I used to believe that to exist, I had to be seen. Now, I only need to be, in a light that doesn't ask for applause.